Knock that ping pong ball. Here we go. Here we go. Come on. Move it on. Let's go. Let's go. Here it goes. Dangerous corners ahead. Oh yeah, Steve team at table 5. Round the table 6 and the table 7 through 8. Good. 9, 10 slips. Oh man, I'm not gonna lie. Here we go. Here it comes. We'll go grand finale. Come on now. Come on now. Come on now.
You see a picture over here of Kacie, and you may be wondering why. Kacie kind of wonders why a little bit, and tonight I want you to get to know Kacie a little bit, and I want you to really get to know her. She's nothing special, by the way, but she's crazy special, just like you are. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna share just a little bit, Kacie, if that's okay. Kacie and I have got to know each other a little better, and I want to tell you just a little bit about her background, and then I'm gonna ask her just a few questions, and then we're gonna get out of here. And I know that you're not nervous, so you're excited to be up here, right? Yeah. right. So Kacie is from Northern Indiana, Mishawaka area, and she attended Ball State University. It's where she met her husband, Drew. And she has been married since 2016 to Drew, and both of them are Ball State grads, and they both live up in the same area. They met while they were on a catering team at Ball State, and then they happened to live by each other, so they went back home to get to know each other better, and the rest is history. Kacie grew up. That was cool. She grew up with not, I think, like a lot of you and a lot of us and me and all of us. Everybody kind of has a story, and Kacie's story is kind of a tough one in her background. Her parents got divorced when she was very young, and age 4. Got divorced when she was age 4, and her mom had to work really hard, and she worked 2 jobs, and really set a lot of work ethic in you, I know. And you worked when you were pretty young too, right? Yeah. To help out. And her dad is an alcoholic, and was during that time frame as well. And that created not a great relationship, and really not even a great relationship, I believe, as of today, still with her dad. So again, it's a story that I think a lot of us can relate to. And I hear Sam say this a lot. This is a safe place for the broken. And man, what a great place then for all of us in this room tonight. So, Kacie, I know that you have you kind of had that background, but you ended up here. And one more thing I'll kind of share that we talked about earlier is, and you might just share kind of your philosophy, or maybe it was your dad's philosophy on church and on God, more on God, and kind of what you knew growing up. Could you just share that with us real quick?
Yeah, my dad was very against God, and he refused to have God and my mom in his vows. And he basically just always taught me that God was just really a fairy tale, and it wasn't. He just always said that it was somebody wrote a book and then a lot of people believed it. And so it wasn't something that I realized was so important. It was just like something that existed to some people because they liked it. It wasn't like spiritual, it wasn't powerful, it wasn't anything. It was just like anything, like basketball, volleyball, like God, church. Like some people went and some people didn't, and he just like always made me believe that, like, if I believed in God, then I would be stupid and foolish, basically.
Yeah, so you grew up really with God. It was more like a fairy tale. Wasn't real, yeah. Right? And that's kind of where you were. So, but yet you're here today, and you're sitting here. If I ask you, why are you here? What would you say to that?
Well, I'm here because I said yes to God. And God gave me gifts, and I'm really excited to use them. And I started off doing small things like design and just kept asking to do more, and now I get to do stuff with the children's ministry, and I love doing events, and really I think it's so important to say yes to God first, because it's so easy to get caught up in stuff and think, well, there's not enough time for Bible study or merge or this or that, and just something that I realized that Sam said is like, you can't outgive God, and I don't think that's just with money. I think like with anything, and if you say yes to Him first, like everything else just works out. So like I either like something gets canceled or an assignment is easier than I thought, but if I always just, it's like He's like, I get it, but just say yes to me and it'll all be fine, and it always is, and it just amazes me.
That's cool. So you said yes.
Yes.
To God. Now, but if we back up to get to that point, you really didn't believe in God, and you met Drew, and Drew did, and you told me a funny story actually about. So a couple funny stories, and I'm gonna let you tell them. But you went to a church service with Drew on Christmas, and you actually got in a fight about it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about how that went on your church experience first time on Christmas.
Drew's family grew up in the church, and he always was raised going to church, and he never really held that against me or anything. But our first Christmas Eve, we went to a Christmas Eve service together with his family, and we ended up getting in a fight basically over church. And his family goes to Granger Community, which is just a bigger church, and they have things like a coffee bar and that stuff. And so immediately just stuff like that my dad would say popped in, and like they're just stealing money basically, and it's all that. And so it just kind of filtered out of me then, and we got in a huge fight. And I just remember basically he just said that he wasn't happy knowing that I wouldn't be in heaven with him, and that just really stuck with me.
Yeah, and then you ended up, you know, we talked earlier about what changed, right? What changed in your life, and you kind of started getting introduced to God a little bit, and then you ended up working at Cool Cayenne, and you were working with John and the team there. I know there was a Bible study that actually happened there, right? And I asked you, I said, did John make you go to that? And you said, no, it wasn't, but he invited you to a lot of stuff, right? And as you were invited, you finally showed up to Harvest one day, right? And what was that like on your first time?
So we looked at a few churches and stuff in Anderson, and
did you have church hunters helping you?
maybe that's why we had so much trouble.
I guess so.
But we looked around at Anderson and didn't really find anything we liked. And just from the first day at working at Cool Cayenne, like John always had, like he was always doing projects for Harvest, or people from Harvest were coming in and like talking to us, and he was always inviting us to events. And so finally Drew was like, well, we can go to Harvest, but we're going to sit in the back so that we can leave if we don't like it. And so, we went just like we went to any other church. So we came in early so that we could get seats. And so we came in early, and there wasn't a lot of people here. So we couldn't really hide, because immediately John saw us, Sam saw us, and came up to us and said hi. And we pretty much couldn't go anywhere. So.
Right. So we laughed about that, because she said, well, that's before you guys changed Harvest time back to real time. But it makes a difference, right?
It does.
It does, yeah, because you showed up early. So, and I know, again, kind of what changed. Your now mother-in-law showed you some grace,
yes.
Right? Can you share that?
Yeah, I didn't know this up until like last month, and I just asked her what her first impression of me is, and she was definitely honest. So I don't remember this, but I guess that when we first met, which was like 6 years ago, me and Drew were working on a dresser that we were like flipping, and she heard me in the garage, and she said that I was just like cussing so much and saying all this stuff, and she just basically went up to Drew and she was like, are you sure you want to be with this girl? Because this is going to be the mother of your child someday. So, and I was just so embarrassed. I couldn't believe that was my first impression.
Yet today your relationship with her is good.
I'm so thankful for his family and everything they do for me. I'm so thankful that they gave me another chance.
And you talked about that earlier about grace and being shown grace and God showing you grace. So kind of a tough background. What changes? You said yes. You opened up your heart, and God obviously was pursuing you the whole time.
Well, with that, I also want to say that what changed are the people that started taking interest in me were people, like it wasn't one big moment or one person or one thing. It was all the people that started taking interest in me were just loved Christ. And so it wasn't just that I met Drew or just that I worked at Cool Cayenne or just this or that. It was like I worked at Cool Cayenne, so I did designs for Sharing Life. So then I went to Sharing Life, and then Jenny Annan started working there, and she invited me to Euchre. And then I met Kenzie Isaacs, and she invited me to Habitat for Humanity. And it was just a bunch of people that kept inviting me. And it's just, you can tell that kind of genuine personality. It's just been great.
Awesome. So what now? What do you see in the future? What's God doing with you, and what do you see?
Well, I think God is finally like, okay, so you're listening now, so we're going to get moving, because in the past year and a half, me and Drew have both been baptized. We both are plugged into Bible study, Emerge. We like to work with the events. We just like to be there whenever we can. And if you asked me a year and a half ago, like, what's next, I wouldn't tell you any of that, because I would have never known I would be doing all that. And so I think God just has really set up like the stage for us to be mission, like we went on the mission trip too, and like we're two missionary redeemers, and it's so exciting, and I just want to continue to submit to that and just continue to say yes. And one thing that I just think that God really has a plan, and everything that he's done for us has set us up that we're gonna, in my opinion, start taking family mission trips, because our entire family was on our mission trip in Jamaica. And so I would be more scared if everything that's happened is because of everyone that's been interested in us in Harvest. And I'm so excited to be able to raise our kid in Harvest and have all these people help with that, and it's just really a blessing.
Awesome. What a great story of a changed life. So hey, can you say thanks to Kacie for getting here tonight?
So we actually practiced this, and it looked different than it did in your version. And I was reminded how alive the church is. I was reminded that what God has done in the church, and in our church specifically, is he's brought people in that are wondering, how do I fit in? What do I bring to the table? What is my twist or turn? What is my story? And it's really kind of a unique story. And the church is made up of these different boxes and these different people that somehow the Holy Spirit and God flow through them, and he brings something beautiful together, and he makes something happen. And God is definitely making something happen through you and through Harvest, and he's not done. And God is jealous, I believe, for this world. He's jealous for sending a message of hope and love out into the world. And he's going to do that through you. And so we want to say thank you. I want to tell you some stories and share some things. So probably from age 4, I'm just going to pick a number, maybe 3, to age 10, so the 5th grade, I went to school, really starting probably age 5 up till, whatever. But at our school, probably like your school, there were 2 recess times. Do you guys have 2 recess times? One in the mid-morning and one in the afternoon. And I remember specifically, every single recess, the bell would go off, and all the kids in class would get up and they would start running for the hallway and running down the hallway, and they would bust out of those doors with pure joy and excitement. Some of them had balls, some of them had frisbees, some of them had all, and they're picking teams, and they're playing kickball, and they're doing all these things. This is not meant to be a sob story, but it's a truth about my life. I didn't do that. For whatever reason, every time that I walked out for recess during those years of my life, I found a corner of the building and I sat in silence through the entire recess. Didn't talk to anybody. I didn't engage. Nobody really engaged me. And when the bell went off, I got up and I'd walk back and to wait at the door for them to let us in. And I'd go back in and I'd sit down. And then afternoon would come and recess is here again, and I'd do the exact same thing. For 5 years or so, that was my existence. That's what I did. And I did it for a reason. I've had some time to think about why I did that. Why was that me? Why would I remove myself from everyone else, and why would I be silent and not talk to anybody and have, really, for the most part, no one talk to me, and not engage in the games? And it was for one reason, and it was because I didn't think I mattered. I didn't just think I didn't matter. I was convinced of that, and I knew that I didn't matter. I thought what I had to say, nobody really cared about. What I had, my life wasn't interesting. Everybody else was kind of cool. I was not. They had nice clothes. I did not. I just didn't fit in. And so I had convinced myself that I didn't fit in, and so I made sure that I wasn't in. I took myself out of play. And I just believed this truth, this lie, that I didn't matter. And so tonight I've got kind of a series of questions I'm going to ask you, throw out to you. What if, or what impact do you think we would have as a church if you believed you didn't matter? What impact do you think that we would have as a church if you believed you didn't matter? You believed that your area of service, what you do at the church, at Harvest, didn't really matter. If you were like me, you looked at other people and you said, well, what Tom is doing is so important, or what Scott is doing is so important. I don't play an instrument, I don't do the, but what I'm doing is not really all that important. I really don't matter. How different would our church be if you believed that in your heart? You know, it's interesting because there's a message that we wanted to send tonight with these dominoes. And by itself, this single domino, maybe double ones, this single domino doesn't mean a whole lot, doesn't seem to be that important. In fact, some people would overlook that one, and that one could kind of sit off by itself and never be noticed. But it does matter. And there was an illustration that we wanted you to grab a hold of tonight, is that every single one of you matters. That you do matter. You don't just matter. You know, it's interesting because I can tell you that you matter, and maybe that means something to you. But it should not mean more to you than what God says about you. Because the message that I carry tonight is not from me. And even though as elders and deacons and staff, we wanted to say a very clear thing tonight. We wanted to say, you matter to us. But quite honestly, I carry a more heavy, a more weighted message this evening. And that weighted message this evening is from God Himself. And He says, you all matter. I've redeemed you for a reason. You are missionary redeemers, is what you are. And you matter. And I started, and of course, when I sit down and I start thinking through this stuff, these just thoughts come into my head, and I don't know what to do with them sometimes, so I'm just going to throw it out at you. And I started thinking, the brightness of a church's witness is defined not at the pulpit and not on the stage, but actually in the halls and highways and grocery stores that the redeemed of that church walk in. In other words, what makes Harvest so unique? You do. Not Sunday morning, but you make the church of God, you make Christ's church unique on every day of the week when you walk out in this world. When you walk these streets of Muncie, wherever you go, you matter. I was in Liberia a few years ago, and Mary Harrington, some of you know her, some of you don't, but it was her first mission trip ever. She's in her late 60s at that time, and we were there about 3 days, and every evening we had kind of a group time, kind of a gather time. We'd sit in a circle, we'd say, what'd you experience? Tell me what did God challenge your heart with today? And it got around to everybody saying, man, this is just so amazing. My heart's broken. It's awesome. I love it. God's just showing me things. And Mary was mad. She was upset. She was frustrated. And she just come out. And I remember it bringing the whole evening down. I'm thinking, settle down, you know. But man, was it powerful. She said, I think I'm mad at God. I'm mad at God. I'm mad at this place. I'm mad at everything. She says, I'm so disturbed because it doesn't seem like anything we do is going to make a difference. This place is so broken and so devastated. And she says, like spitting into the ocean. And I honestly, I didn't have anything to say back. I just listened, and I could feel her heart hurting because she felt so helpless and she felt so discouraged because she wanted to know, what difference are we really making? I want you to know that a dead church says, oh well, what difference does it make? A dead church says, oh well, what difference does it make? It won't matter anyways. I don't matter. And that's exactly the beginning of the death of a church, is when the people that are in your shoes start saying, excellence doesn't matter, serving doesn't matter, my position doesn't matter. We want you to know that you count. We want you to know that you matter more than you believe. And we want you to know that you matter not just to us, but you matter to God. God has you here for a reason. It's for His kingdom. I did a little counting today, and according to the numbers, I believe this is to be true. I've written down everybody's name that has been baptized, has surrendered their life to Christ in Harvest. And it's right around 200 people have given their life to Christ at Harvest. And I want you to kind of wrestle with that, and I want you to think about that a little bit. And just for a minute, if you would, if you have given your life to Christ at Harvest, will you please stand? Will you put your hands together for them? You can have a seat. I want that to be a message to you. I want that to be a message to you. This is why. This is why we do what we do. Your service has changed 200 people's eternity, where they're going to spend eternity. And that won't stop tonight, and it won't end tonight. It's going to continue on. This week alone, we've had 2 people surrender to Christ, and that's been exciting for me to see that, to watch God draw people unto Himself as we share His message. A couple of days ago, Kacie came in, and she didn't know her picture would be up here. And I don't think she likes it up there, to be honest with you. In fact, she asked, why is my picture up here? And Tom looks across the table. I'm like, looking at Tom, like, you didn't tell her? He goes, oh yeah, by the way, Sam, we didn't really tell her before she came in here and seen it. I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you why your picture's up there, Kacie. The answer is simple, because one life is what our church is about. One life matters. And you would never tie cleaning the bathrooms to Kacie's salvation. You would never tie a prayer blanket to Kacie's salvation. You would never tie cleaning up in the pew or baby, watching the babies in nursery or teaching them something. You would never tie those things together. I think a lot of times we tie someone's salvation to the actual Bible study or to the actual sermon or to the actual day at church. But I think, even listening to what you said, Kacie, it was tied to a lot of little things. And God kept inviting you to something deeper through everyone that you were around. And I want that to be a message tonight. That what you do, the little things that you do matter. I want this to be a springboard this evening. To be a springboard into something more. That we don't settle as a church. That we hunger for deeper things. And that we want to make Christ's name known in our families, in our communities. That it does matter. It's interesting because I look at Kacie and I think, you know, you're a part of our story and we're a part of your story forever. Forever. We're forever connected, which is kind of cool. You know, Tom's been asking the question all evening, and the question that you've asked is this: what are people looking for? What are people looking for? The people that you know that you're reaching out to, your family members who said no to God, who said no to church, your co-workers that turned you down countless times, what are they looking for? And I thought that I would answer that question. They're looking to see if anyone cares. I believe that those people around you are looking to see if anyone cares. They're looking to see if love is real in every detail. They've heard all the talk, they've heard all the stories, they want to know if love is real in you. And I believe that people want to know if God is real. And how they are figuring out if God's real or not is they're looking at your acts of service. They're looking at you, and they're looking at the passion in which you greet them. They're looking at the passion in which you show up to your class on time. You show up to your nursery on time. You show up to how you serve, the pride that you have in your church. As we go out on mission and we say, wow, are we into it? Are we pumped up? And you know, they might say, you can say whatever it is about harvest, but they're pumped about serving. They're pumped about Jesus. You can tell in the passion in which they run to service. What are people looking for? I think people are looking to belong to something that's bigger than them. I noticed something. I noticed that you guys kind of lost interest of the different groups setting up these dominoes. I just took note of that. And you guys actually, some of you, myself included, were more interested in dessert. Like, it was like this competition, right? Set up this little section of dominoes. Okay, well, whatever's happening over there, it's not my business. Whatever. But when everything was set up and everything was about to come together, you guys, the temperature in this room just kind of raised up. And you were all leaning in, and you're all like, wow, look at that. And you were pumped when it went all the way around. You know, it's interesting because I was watching you when you were setting it up too, and how many times you knocked it down? You know, I've seen some of you knock it down. You're like, oh, I've got to set it back up. Down here, the guys that were setting, you guys did about 3 times. You know, as a church, we're going to have some things that fall through. We're going to have some things that where we count on one another and we're going to let one another down. We need to forgive one another. You know, but we need to raise the bar. You know, we've been inspired for greatness. That's the calling of this church. And there have been times when every single one of us could look at one another and say, yeah, that's me. I've let the team down. And, you know, any one of these sections, if one of them lets the other section down, it doesn't do what it did, right? It doesn't come around. And maybe a life is not impacted like it needed to be impacted. And the whole reason is something that happened over here. You know, we're in a battle. And in this battle, people are losing their lives. And you can't, I cannot make you or help you to understand the significance of your presence on a Sunday morning when some of us have prayed that week for the service, and some of us have laid out all kinds of things for the service. Tonight, in the 6 hours tonight that I'm going to be in here, pouring over what I'm going to share tomorrow. And then you show up tomorrow and you say, wow, I appreciate what you do. I can't tell you what that does for me. So I don't want you to underestimate your value. A smiling face, a warm welcome. To show up and say, you matter, you're somebody, is important. In Matthew chapter 20, there's this Jesus story that I want to tell you, and I'm just going to tell it to you. So Jesus is telling his disciples that he's getting ready to die. And he's going to leave them, and his kingdom's going to come, and all this stuff. And if you've ever been in a Bible study, we talked about this a lot. I've talked about it from the pulpit, but the people around Jesus did not understand what he was saying. They all wanted him to be the conquering king there. They wanted him to overthrow the government that was beating them down, the Roman government. And so the 12 disciples were human like you and I, and so anytime Jesus was going to fight, they thought he was going to fight, they thought the king was going to come, they're ready. Peter's got his sword out, he's cutting ears off, all these people, they're not getting it. That Jesus is literally going to die on a cross, be buried in a tomb, and then going to raise from the dead in 3 days, and going to leave them. And so, Jesus has just got done, just before our text in chapter 20, he tells them he's going to die, and his kingdom's going to come. And two of the disciples' mom, if any of you moms can relate with this, they go to Jesus and they say to Jesus, they don't, but the mom goes to Jesus and she pulls Jesus aside and says, Jesus, can you do me a favor? I need a favor from you, Jesus. Okay? And Jesus is like, well, what's the favor? And she actually says, can you let my one son sit on the right side of you and my other son sit on the left side of you? Can you have them? I know you're going to go in your glory and it's going to be amazing and your kingdom's going to be here. Can they be number one and number two? Can you imagine the audacity? Well, the other 10 get word of this and they're ticked. Like they are miffed. And you know what's interesting? They're not mad, I don't believe, at the audacity of her. They're not mad because it's so improper to ask, can I be number one? They're mad, I think, because they didn't get to Jesus first with a request. So you know what that means? That means that one of them, they got to be number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7. Somebody's got to be number 12. And we were sort of why didn't you tell us? So now these two guys are going to get to be number 1 and number 2, and we get left out of the equation. And Jesus has a powwow with his disciples. He pulls them in and he says, I want to tell you guys something. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Greatness is being a servant to all. What Jesus does is he inspires us to the greatness of serving others, to washing feet. He inspires us and says greatness is sacrifice. That's what greatness is. The mark of a great church is sacrifice. The mark of a great church is serving the King, is washing people's feet. The mark of a great church is when somebody walks in our door, they say, wow, I'm somebody to God. I'm somebody to God. Because the world has told me that I'm not anybody until I get these things. strive for greatness. See, what Jesus does is he reveals the greatness in being less and giving more. Being less and giving more. I want you to grab onto this truth. This is just in closing. And it's this. The inspired empty themselves so that others can see the greatness of God. The inspired empty themselves so that others can see the greatness of God. That's what we're doing at Harvest.